Continuing now on Newsmax Prime, we continue discussing the rift within the Republican Party and how it could affect the 2016 campaign. The New York Times now reporting that GOP leaders are growing increasingly concerned as support continues to grow and galvanize for Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. The report says GOP leaders are urging establishment candidates, if they're not getting support, to, get out of the race as they try to settle on one establishment candidate to bring down the numbers for Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. Will that work? Let's call on our political panel. First up, from Cincinnati, the former mayor of that great city and the former Secretary of State for Ohio, Ken Blackwell. Ken, now a senior fellow at the Family Research Council. And also via Skype, from our nation's capital, the former Deputy Staff Secretary to President Bill Clinton, David Goodfriend. Now David is at the eponymously named Goodfriend Government Affairs. So Ken, since you're a Republican and we're talking about the Republican rift, will the establishment settle on one candidate to try to take down Ted and Trump?
Well, they have about as good a chance to do that as I have of running a 10 flat 110 meter dash. It's just not going to happen. They would have to talk some guys who have track records and pretty big egos to drop out before you get to South Carolina. Look, we can just bet on this. We're going to have a pretty full field in Iowa and in New Hampshire, and then we'll start to get a thinning out in South Carolina. But it will be naturally. It won't be by some big shots calling the tune.
David, we've noted before that as a Democrat, you enjoy this whole little sub-series called When Republicans Attack Each Other. But you're on the ground there in D.C. Do you have any interaction with your Republican pals? What are you hearing as a Democrat?
Listen, this Democrat's about to go on a golf trip to Florida with some of my Republican pals. So yes, I talk about it all the time with them. Listen, I really think we can get too caught up in the horse race aspect of this because both Democrats and Republicans need to pay attention to something that's going on in our country. And that is the lack of upward mobility, the increasing income inequality that, by the way, both conservatives and progressives detest, is starting to have an impact on our politics. Vice President Biden mentioned this in Davos, Switzerland. He said, when we allow this kind of rampant income inequality to run amok, we get polarization in our politics because not enough people have enough stake in the status quo. So I would urge people not to get comfortable, but rather to understand that there's a lot of pain out there. And if you're an establishment Republican or an establishment Democrat and you don't like to see how much support Trump or Sanders are getting, then you need to look in the mirror and say we need to do more to bring back the American middle class and the American political center, because it's happening across the board. And I think the political class and the establishment on all sides better take note.
Well, you invoked the name Bernie Sanders. It was interesting to see the Democrat town hall in Iowa last night, and the Vermont senator made the case to voters at that town hall that his judgment overall, and in fact his foreign policy judgment, is better than that of Hillary Clinton. Let's look and listen.
Listen to the speech that I gave when I was in the House in 2002, saying, yeah, it's easy to get rid of a dictator like Saddam Hussein, but there's going to be a political vacuum, there will be instability, and it gives me no pleasure to tell you that much of what I feared, in fact, happened. Hillary Clinton voted for the war in Iraq.
So, Ken, as we look at it as Republicans, is Bernie going to make a case based on the issues or the whole atmosphere around Hillary and the serious questions about her honesty and integrity?
Well, I think he's going to eventually focus on honesty and integrity. He cannot pick up the banner of leading from behind, a continuation of hollowing out our defenses, and expect Americans to feel warmly about him. David hit on something. Look, both parties are going to have to understand that if we don't have economic growth and real job creation, we're going to have low labor participation rate, and we're going to be dependent upon a redistribution system that takes from one group, the middle class primarily, to give to bigger government, and that's just not going to work.
It is hard work running for office, running for the presidency, and there have been some reports on the internet, some disturbing video about Mrs. Clinton's health over the weekend in Iowa, an uncontrollable coughing fit, and there have been questions about a thyroid condition. David, in addition to all the other concerns raised about Secretary Clinton, is the health issue going to be something that carries some weight?
No, I think she's made clear, and God knows that woman has traveled more than most people will in several lifetimes. She's traveled all over the world. She's been through grueling schedules, both as Secretary of State and as Senator and as First Lady. She's no stranger to this. If she has a cough, it's because it's cold in Iowa, and I wouldn't read too much more into it than that. It sounds to me like someone's fishing for reasons other than engaging in policy disagreements they might have with her. Let's stick to the facts and the policy and see how they measure up. Not get distracted by these sideshows like what's going to happen with emails or what's going to happen with her health. Come on.
Well, I don't know that emails are a sideshow, but I will say this to you, David. I can recall my last campaign for the U.S. Senate where I started to sound so hoarse I sounded like your former boss, Bill Clinton. David Goodfriend in Washington, Ken Blackwell in Cincinnati. Gentlemen, you have our thanks. Up next, surprising indictments in Texas over Planned Parenthood. We'll talk about that with Marsha Blackburn coming up.